Hey, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. You're listening to the longest running superhero role playing game on Earth. I'm your host, the Game Master, and today we're talking about the Skrulls, Doctor Doom, the Fantastic Four, the children of the Fantastic Four, the Infinity Gems, and just all sorts of stuff. But before we get into all that, smash like, make sure you're subscribed, and leave us a comment. That helps us out with the YouTube algorithm. Also, we love hearing from you guys. We've got a fantastic community here, and it's all thanks to you. So, thank you so much for being here. So, all that said, let's dive in. The prologue to today's story is a brief recap of a few previous relevant adventures. In 1994, Doctor Doom seemed to die, and one of the Doombots seemed to think that he was the real Doctor Doom. But recently, we learned he really was the real Doctor Doom, and the notorious elderly supervillain had used personality transfer to swap bodies with the robot before his biological demise. That same villain is the one who assumed control of the robotic masters of evil and ended up fighting a group of Skrull rebels who were also posing as various classic Marvel supervillains. Currently, the Skrull homeworld is ruled by a woman who is lawful good, and her side was able to keep the peace because they had perfected the Super Skrull technology, and a bunch of the good Skrulls each had the powers of four Marvel superheroes. The evil Skrull rebels, on the other hand, pirated that technology with their own limited resources. And as such, they had crappy version of it that they used, and then they were able to mimic the powers of just one Marvel supervillain. One of them had chosen to have the powers of Loki, and he had been leading a group of Skrull villains on Earth when they ran into Doctor Doom and the robotic masters of evil. So they fought, and in the end, Doom swapped bodies with Skrull Loki using that personality transfer ability of his. Then he crushed his enemy, literally, and the brother of Skrull Loki swore revenge against Doctor Doom. Doom then journeyed to the Skrull Empire, where they mistook him for Skrull Loki. Because of this, Doom was able to access the machinery that the rebels had been using to give themselves the powers of a single supervillain. And Doom used this machine in an attempt to create his own Infinity Gauntlet. But what he got was not actually infinite in power. So we jokingly referred to it as the finite gauntlet out of game. But it was still a really powerful weapon, one that Doom began to use. But in the end, the Earth's heroes tackled Doctor Doom, forcing him through a portal into another universe. And the Skrull version of the Infinity Gems had the same weakness that the genuine article had, which is that if you remove them from their home universe, then they lose their power. Ultimately, those gems were taken to the White House, where they were given to the previous president of the United States. But when the Shaper of Worlds destroyed all government property and all of the government's buildings slowly began to crumble, the Skrull version of those Infinity Gems were buried in that rubble. The brother of Skrull Loki, who had also been given the powers of Loki, then went to Latveria, hoping to get his revenge. But instead, he found that when the Shaper of Worlds did his thing, it inadvertently had freed Mephisto, who in turn had imprisoned the soul of Doctor Doom in hell. And in his place, the brother of Skrull Loki found an imposter wearing a replica of Doctor Doom's armor. This imposter was actually one of many copies of King Arthur, created by Mirror Masters Mirror. Barry Allen has a daughter named Dawn Allen who had used that mirror gun who create copies of both herself and the gun. And one of those Dawn Allens wound up back in time where she lost her mirror gun. It ended up in the hands of the evil leader of Germany during World War II. And in a struggle with King Arthur at the very end of that war, that mirror gun went off, creating duplicates of them both. So, one of Arthur's duplicates was now living in Latveria, and he was married to Dr. Doom's daughter, Valeria, while another one of Arthur's duplicates was living on the Skrull homeworld, and he was actually married to that lawful good Skrull Empress who I mentioned earlier. So, no matter how you look at it, the brother of Skrull Loki now sees Arthur as his number one enemy, which brings us to the main plot of today's game session. Brother of Skrull Loki used his shapeshifting to look human, and he was part of the cleanup crew in Washington, D.C. So it was he who found the depowered Skrull version of the Infinity Gems. If the Skrulls' precious machinery that the rebels had was destroyed to bring these things into creation, which, by the way, really screwed over the Skrull rebels, then this guy was bound and determined to make the best use of them that he could. But somehow they needed to be recharged so that they would work again. And the Skrulls had no idea how to do that. So the brother of Skrull Loki then journeys to New York City in search of Reed Richards, right? And to be clear, Reed Richards is notorious in Skrull circles. They all know quite a bit about him, including the fact that the various gadgets in Four Freedoms Plaza can tell if somebody is a Skrull. So, since that's the case, the brother of Skrull Loki disguises himself as Lyja, the female Skrull who used to be married to Johnny Storm. So for right now, let's just refer to the brother of Skrull Loki as Lyja 2. Anyways, so one day, Willie Lumpkin delivers the mail to Four Freedoms Plaza, and Johnny Storm receives a letter from Lyja 2 claiming to be his ex-wife and saying that she misses him. Now, Johnny's been through a lot over the years. And as we said in previous adventures, he's at a really low point in his life right now. He used to be married to Frankie Ray, who a lot of people will know by the moniker of Nova, but she was also the third person to go by the title of the Human Torch. Anyways, so Frankie Ray and Johnny Storm are now divorced. And Johnny's been through a lot, and he's trying to sort of repent of some of the bad things that he's done in the past. So when this false Lyja claims that she also is in that very same boat, pretty soon he invites her over. So when Lyja 2 walks into Four Freedoms Plaza and the alarm goes off, alerting the heroes to the fact that she's a Skrull, they just turn it off. Lyja 2 then keeps catfishing Johnny using deception and emotional manipulation. All the while, she's looking for Reed Richards. She sees Ben Grimm and Ben's wife Sharon, as well as Herbie the robot. So eventually she just asks if Reed and Sue are home. And Johnny explains that she's missed a lot and that Sue met a guy named Jack Redbridge who bought the old Baxter building for her, and they live there together. And Reed used to live here in Four Freedoms Plaza, but recently Galactus and his new heralds, the Frightful Four, had attacked the Fantastic Four and their kids. And in the end, Reed pulled Galactus into this alternate dimension. So Lyja 2 is furious that all of his effort seems to have been for nothing. But a thought occurs to him. So Lyja 2 asks, who are these kids? So Johnny explains that Reed and Sue had a daughter named Valeria, which, by the way, is the same name as Doctor Doom's daughter, but they are not the same person, right? They are two completely different people. But anyway, so Valeria Richards was born way back when. She's a grown woman now, and she in turn has two kids who she named after her own parents. So her kids are named Reed the Second and Sue the Second. And Johnny adds that the kids are not only the spitting image of their their grandparents, but they have the same powers too. Johnny says it's really weird, and Ben Grimm chimes in saying their whole life is really weird, proving that the Fantastic Four actually have no idea that the Scarlet Witch caused the next generation to turn out exactly like the generation that she had grown up with. But I digress. The point is that Elijah 2 wants to know where Reed the Second is. So Johnny tells her that he's up in his grandfather's old laboratory working on a Stargate. Elijah 2 asks if she can see the Stargate. And Johnny agrees to it, but he's also a little weirded out that she said that she came here to talk about how she still has feelings for him, supposedly. But so far, she really doesn't seem very interested in him. Nonetheless, Johnny takes Elijah 2 to go meet with Reed the Second. And when she walks in, the sensors in the lab not only detect the fact that she's a Skrull, they also detect that on her person, she has with her those deep powered finite versions of infinity gems, right? So Reed the Second asks her where she got the finite gems. And Elijah 2 says that Skrull machinery made them, which is true. She asks if Reed can repair them, and Johnny interrupts, saying, "Wait, hold on. Is that why you came here?" Reed the Second says the idea of somebody just being able to like replicate infinity gems has terrifying implications and is wildly irresponsible. And at this point, Elijah 2 is tired of playing pretend. So he causes his left hand to grow to huge proportions and he grabs Johnny, and his hand envelops him faster than Johnny can say, "Flame on." Johnny is completely covered in green flesh now. So there is no oxygen for his powers to work. But also, he's running out of air, right? So Elijah, too, tells Reed to fix the damn gems. Reed tries to fight Elijah, but as we saw in previous adventures, the powers of Loki are crazy powerful. So Reed the Second is actually knocked out. Elijah 2 eventually just lets Johnny Storm suffocate. Then, when his heart seems to have finally stopped beating, Elijah 2 uses the Stargate to escape, which brings us to the epilogue. Eventually, Sue Storm swings by because she heard that Elijah was back in Johnny's life and she was concerned for her younger brother's well being. So it's actually Sue who finds the body of Johnny in the lab. But as we said in previous adventures, Johnny had actually died and had been resurrected recently. When he came back, he now had the invulnerability power from DC Heroes, which, by the way, in my humble opinion, it has a really misleading name. The DC Heroes version of invulnerability does not keep you from taking damage. What happens is when someone does so much damage that your hit points are in the negatives, then invulnerability kicks in. You have to roll dice, but assuming you get a good roll, invulnerability puts you back up into the positives again. Such was the case with Johnny Storm. So Sue finds him and he slowly comes around with this horrible headache from suffocating, basically, right? But he is alive. He tells her that Elijah had these dead infinity gems that were made by the Skrulls, and she needed Reed the Second to repair them. Sue is upset by this news for a bunch of reasons, but one of them is that her son, Reed, has been abducted by a Skrull and taken to God knows where. And that's where this one ends, on a cliffhanger this time. We enjoyed this one. We hope that you did too. If so, smash like, make sure you're subscribed, and leave us a comment. And from all of us here at the longest running superhero role playing game on earth, we hope you have a good one, and we'll see you in the next adventure. Bye.